T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Global Watchman News. My name is Lori Swan. Hope you guys are all doing well. Here in the live chat, we do ask to keep it family friendly. There will be moderators in there to make sure that we stay within the terms of service put forth to us by the platform we're utilizing tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Take a minute, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you know when we go live. So, guys, lots been going on. We had to reschedule Dr. JOYE from last month. So we have a lot to talk about because a lot has happened since the last time she was here. But I would first want to, Ernie, how you doing?
Making in there. I'm blessed and thankful that God has graced me with another day on this earth. And I'm just thankful that we have a God that can bear all burdens. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I want to welcome back to the panel for our Sunday night roundtable with Dr. JOYE Jeffries-Pugh. Hey, JOYE.
Hi, Lori. Hi, Ernie. I've been waiting for this since we set this. I missed you all. I mean, I missed you so much last month. And I'm like, there's so much happening. You know, you both get it. You understand the times in which we're living. And oh my gosh, all the stuff that's really been happening. And I tell you, Lori, I'm going to say it again. your bumper music to come on with is just my favorite. I tell you, I think it just gives me an energy that I can't even express what
Yeah.
that music does to me. I love music. I'm a musician, and so I really enjoy music. But I really did miss both of you last month, and I hope tonight's going to be a really informative show. There's a lot happening in the world, and we are watchmen on the wall. And so when we find these things and we can share these things in this open forum like this, where people can listen either live or later, an archive, I just hope that it touches somebody's heart, that you see that the realization of what's really going on around you and come to the understanding how important it is for you to make a decision to choose Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, so that you're saved, that your soul is taken care of. It's your greatest asset. And I hope tonight that we can answer some questions that are really going to be coming at us over the next couple of days and years. So I'm really excited about tonight's show.
I am too, and we don't really set too much. I mean, there's a lot of times that when we are live, we get talking. Those 2 hours always fly by. At the end, we're like, look, we're going to pick this up at the next our next show. But because we lost a month, so much has happened. So when we talked, we kind of chatted yesterday, and he sent me the link. We were on the same page, because this is something that Ernie and I and my viewers have been watching. This whole disclosure thing, literally, I would say within the past 6, 8, 9 months, has just exploded.
Well, yes. I mean, you look back, I think it was June 9th, something like that, of 2023, that we had someone literally go live and, exclaim that this UFO information was being withheld from the Congress. And we've got a whistleblower who is a former high-level intelligence official, and who was, in this particular position, that he would have had access to people at the higher ranks of our government and our military that would have known about the UFO phenomena, which we know it's also called in their circles, unidentified aerial phenomena, the UAP. So people may see UAP and it's the same thing as UFO.
Mm-hmm.
That these people are coming forward and talking about what they know to be true. And I think that this is probably one of the biggest, I think, things that humanity will have heard in a long time. And that is that we are not alone, and that there is something out there. It's more intelligent, more capable, and that the craft that they have been securing have types of technology that far exceed anything we have been able to produce. And like all the people who have tried to come forward in the past and who are called conspiracy theorists, that they were using these craft for backward engineering. And so that it gives a lot of credibility to when we look at things that over the years have looked like the UFOs that have been described by people around the world who are willing to step forward and try to, share their stories, even though they were sometimes called kook, crazy,
Well,
weird.
they were somewhat mocked and ridiculed. I mean, let's start at like the beginning for modern time UFOs. I think everybody can agree would be 1947 with the Roswell crash.
That's correct.
And from that time forward, we saw the U.S. government creating Project Blue Book and various secret agencies that took care of these stories and investigated these UFO phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I think, back in the 1970s, used to joke around, and they'd be like, it was a joke. It was the men in black showed up and told us it was swamp gas. There was nothing.
Right.
To see.
Correct.
There was nothing to see. But yet, over the years, I have personal firsthand stories that I could tell. I grew up, my grandparents lived out in the country, like we're talking like in the country. And it was probably about 7 miles from Niagara Falls Air Force Base, which has since been closed for decades. But at that time, it was one of the missile silos for the nuclear missiles back in the 70s and 80s, and 60s and 70s and 80s. And my grandfather was a truck driver. I lived with my grandparents because my mother was handicapped. She was in the hospital at that time. And every few days, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I would have to get out of bed, get dressed, and go with my grandmother to pick up my grandfather. And there was many times that we would get in the car in the middle of the night and we would drive down this road, again, country, no lights, no anything. And lights would come over us from the top and the car would stall. And my grandmother would look at me and she goes, "It's okay. It'll start up in just a minute. Just be quiet. The light will go out. They'll leave and we'll be able to take off again." And sure enough, that's what happened. And it happened a number of times. But I never told anybody growing up, or I never told anything because, first off, my family knew about it. Everybody in that area knew about it. It wasn't something that, you had to convince anybody. But it happened several times. And a lot of people have those same experiences.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the same thing that I grew up. I actually talked about my first UFO experience in my book, Parables of JOYE, on a Georgia farm. And it happened when I was 8 years old. And what I saw with my own eyes was not a plane. It was not a bird. It was at night. It had no sound.
Yep.
And my dad saw it. He was a pilot. And back in those days in South Georgia on a little farm, there were no airplanes flying around at night. There were very few that even landed in Atlanta, Georgia. And I've laughed and told the story because that's one of the biggest hubs for all of our air, travel now is out of Atlanta. But I can remember at, that age going up to Atlanta and having to walk up on one building to the top of the building to wait for about an hour for a plane to land so I could actually see a bigger plane land on a runway. So it's something that I know that I saw with my own eyes. I know how upset it made my father. And from that point on, I knew that we were not alone, that there was something going on far exceeding anything that was back in those days. So, over the years of looking to the skies, because I had that first sighting, I have had a lot of UFO sightings. And several of them, Lori, I have actually had published in the MUFON Journal and also as case studies that have been kept in their archives about things that I've seen, because from the moment that I catch anything strange in the sky, I immediately note all the scientific data to go with it. How high is, what's altitude, what kind of temperature do you have? Is it cloudy? Where's the moon at? Where's the constellation at? I mean, I am playing science with everything that I can think of to rule out what I'm seeing. So I'm not looking at it, wanting it to be a UFO. I'm looking at it to determine what is it. And then taking all the data down to, how length of time, what it's like, how big it is it round, is it whatever, every bit of that. And so, from the time that I was a little girl and people would start talking about this, it was always in secret. Let me tell you something I saw one night. Let me tell you, nobody wanted to talk about it.
But that's because of the government interference. As soon as they get wind that you've seen these things, that's when these men in black will pay you a visit.
Well, the funny thing is, one of the greatest ones that I saw that was actually, I think it was actually in the MUFON Journal, but after I had that happen, I did call and talk to Walt Andrus, who was actually over MUFON at the time, which is a mutual UFO network.
I've spoken with those guys, yes.
And so, he put me in contact with a guy named Chris Early that was the MUFON executive director over Atlanta and Georgia at the time. And he was a physicist. And I think that he has since passed. But he and another man drove down from Atlanta to sit and talk with me about it. Well, not too long after that, a couple of days later, I had a call that came in, and they said that they were from a radio station over in the Savannah area, and they had heard that I had had some strange sighting, and that they wanted to come over and just talk with me. And so that was before I even knew anything about Men in Black. And so I said, sure, that'll be fine. I have no problem, explaining what I saw because it was very significant. And so I waited that day and they came and I invited them into my home. I sat at the table. I drew everything that I had seen. I took them outside. I showed them the area of the sky. And then I drove around to the other side of the lake where I witnessed, what was going on for probably another 2 hours. Showed them where I stood, what the things did, how they flew, what directions they came in. I mean, I went through every kind of scientific analysis you could go through. And they told me, they said, they're taking down all these notes. And they said, well, we'll let you know when this is going to air. We thank you for your time, da, 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 da. And so they gave me a card. And after they left, I noticed, that the card didn't have a tag on the back of it. And I'm thinking, that's a little strange. So a couple of days went by and I thought, they gave me this card. I'm going to call and just see if I can talk to the people who give me the card. I tried that number over and over and over, and there was no such people. So I was completely open and honest to these two men that came and told them everything that I had seen. But that card did not own up to have a number. You call it and it's not in working order anymore. I called around to like the TV stations and things over in that area. Nobody had sent any reporters into my area to interview anybody. Just the weirdest thing. And then the other thing that I had happen, I had a pretty significant sighting coming from Albany, Georgia, one night into Tifton, Georgia. And my husband, Mill, that is now deceased, was actually with me. And I had caught these lights up in the sky right over these pine trees. I mean, just maybe just a little bit above the pine trees. And when I saw it, I was looking up, and I had a bag phone at the time, which was very, very few people had bag phones when I had my first phone. And the telephone rang, and the only person that had my number was Mill, who was in the car with me, and my mother in the event of emergency. Lori, I picked up the phone and said hello, because I had to look down to grab the bag phone. And I was trying to keep my head up, looking up, trying to watch these things. And there was a woman that sounded almost like she was foreign, like either Japanese, foreign, some weird kind of sound like that. But it didn't really sound Japanese, and it didn't really sound Chinese. It was very artificial intelligence sounding when you hear these AI kind of robots talk. It had a weird flavor to it, but it had a flavor that made it sound foreign, and it said, hello, hello. And I said, hello. And then it didn't say anything. I said, hello. And I think that it was trying its best to get me to be paying attention to the bag phone so that I would go under this UFO that was sitting just to my left, right above a house. It was not moving. It was a perfect triangle, and it was just sitting there. And when I said hello, and I couldn't get anybody to say anything, I thought, that is really weird. But anyway, I got to see this UFO. I got to watch it for a long period of time. I did write it up, the whole 9 yards. But it literally was sitting over a home. I mean, right off the highway. And I flipped around, came back, got back around, turned back around. I mean, there was people going up and down the highway, and nobody was even paying any attention. And so finally, I think it knew what I was doing, and it floated over the highway just like a balloon. I mean, it was not moving any faster than that. And so I went down to a little area and turned around, and the thing went down in a swamp. And of course, my husband says, what are we going to do? And I said, roll the windows down. He says, what are you going to do? I said, I'm turning the car off. We're going to listen. And it sounded like a rumble noise, nothing like you would hear in a plane. And it landed. It stopped. And so it was dark. And we just sat there and waited and waited and waited. And then all of a sudden, it started lifting back up, and you could hear this funny little rumble noise. It came up over that little swamp area and then went back across the highway with me following it right up under it. I mean, it was like a triangle. And I mean, it was like you think of a pine tree. I would say maybe 50 feet above a pine tree. I'm talking about like that close to me. And it went on across and got away from us, so we couldn't go where it was at. So I told him, I said, well, the one thing I'm going to find out, I'm going to call and I'm going to get my carrier for my bag phone, and they're going to tell me where that number came from. Would you believe there was nothing, no record that I had ever gotten a call? Well, now, Lori, back in the day, if somebody called you or you called them, you had a record because you had to pay for it in those bag phones like that.
Right, exactly. I remember that.
So somebody was trying to distract me in that car for that phone. Nobody had my phone number. Mel was in the car with me. My mother was at home. Nobody else had my number. Nobody.
Yeah, back then.
I wonder if it was coming from that craft itself, the spacecraft.
I think it was definitely that. And I think that when I started slowing down, that's when the phone started ringing. And I think they were trying to distract me of answering the phone so that I would drive on past it and never look back. Well, I was smart enough because I've seen enough of them to know this is not right. I mean, I immediately noted it from the time I saw the little lights that were on it. Bright white lights. They won't have any like red or green flashing lights like port and starboard side like you typically have in a plane or a ship or anything of that nature. So I was just glued onto it. And the night sky from where we had a bad thunderstorm, the clouds were low dense clouds. And so Tifton is a pretty nice little town. And so the lights were reflecting up into the clouds. So when I got past it and looked back, I could see the triangle perfect. I mean, perfectly triangle. So that really just solidified it, because if I had not turned back, anybody going by, they might have thought, well, that might be a helicopter coming over, and they weren't realizing it's not moving. It literally was sitting there, not moving, 50 feet above a pine tree.
Wow. Well, have you heard of the Phoenix Lights?
Yes, I've read all about them and all the documentary that was done on that particular case.
March of 1997. These lights. I'll try to pull it up here and give you guys some sort of. I was at South Mountain at the time. I had just got done hiking with my husband. We were sitting. There's a spot up on South Mountain where you can kind of like right here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, right here. Well, no. If you look on South Mountain and there's this one spot, you can look over the valley. You can look completely over the city Phoenix proper. You can see everything. You can see the airport. You can see the other mountains. You can see. I mean, literally, you just look over.
Yes.
And we were sitting there and we watched these line of lights, and they came from up north to the south, and they followed it's almost like they followed Central Avenue right down the middle of the city of Phoenix.
Yes.
And there was no sound, and they tried to make us believe that they were flares. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you that I've never seen flares do what they did. They sped up, they slowed down, they moved in a straight line. They kept their altitude. There was a lot of things, that was questionable about this. They had people that actually took video. They did do that documentary on it. I don't know, a while back, but they have appeared several times since. But when I was out in Phoenix, there was a lot of activity just west of Luke Air Force Base, and there was things that we would see things, but they always had a sound. They always sounded things. But in the same sense, Lockheed Martin was a big manufacturer out there at the time.
Yes.
And
yes.
they were doing a lot of things that were in secret out there as well. So, but when I was out there in 2012, That's when I came across the Paul Hellyer. And I mention this a lot when we talk about these things, because he was the ex-Canadian Minister of Defense, and he actually went before his Congress and delivered a report saying that there was 4 types of alien species. He specifically identified them and said that they were living on Earth right now and working with various governments of the world.
Well, you know, the thing about it is, we've heard these stories from, I believe, very credible people. And, you know, when there is a little bit of fire and smoke, you better be paying attention that there's a lot more somewhere. And I think that it's quite evident when I was looking at Representative Tim Burchett's interview on C-SPAN. And, you know, he is the Republican that has been, I guess, put in charge. I think he's from Tennessee, to do the particular House Oversight Committee's hearing, which is actually coming up July the 26th. That's this coming Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the morning. And from what I understand in regard to that, they've got 3 great people that are going to be testifying as to what they know to be true. And of course, we know that David Grush, that is the one that actually became the first whistleblower, that seems to have very good and great understanding of the UFO analysis, and has had the opportunity to speak with a lot of people that supposedly have had direct communication and have seen not only the alien bodies, but the alien craft that we are backward engineering. And I know that the commander, David, I think it's Fraser, that was the pilot that filmed the Tic Tac that's so popular right now that they keep showing, which is quite amazing. That film definitely shows you that the capability of what these craft are able to do far exceed anything that our human bodies could withstand. And even the UFO that are the 2 UFOs, and then about 6 more during the night that I was telling you about, the one that they sent those men down to ask me about. It was clear to me from the get-go when I saw those that there was no way, with the G-forces that those things were pulling in the sky and the way that they were running, that there was any way a human body could have been inside of those things. And then they said Ryan Graves is going to be also testifying, and he is the one that, he warned the Pentagon that these UFOs or UAPs were actually putting pilots at risk. And it was funny because when the testimonies were supposed to be given earlier in the year before Congress, he was supposed to have testified. But some way or another, they wouldn't let him in, or they gave him, I guess, some kind of weird passes to get in, and he couldn't get in. And they weren't really, I don't think they really wanted him to testify. I think that they made it look like he was going to, and then made sure he didn't. But I think it's pretty bad when you've got Tim Burchett telling us, as the American people who pay the taxes to make these government entities work, that he's saying that it's the intelligence community, NASA, the Pentagon, and other Congress people who are causing a stalemate, and that they are trying to keep this from becoming available to the American people in our area. And the weird thing is that, he and several of his colleagues went to the aviation group and tried to get them to say that all the UFO reports, or the UAP reports, whichever one you want to call it, would have to go to Congress, so that it would keep Congress totally informed about what our airline pilots are saying. Because, I've known airline pilots who have come forward after they retired and told these stories,
Yep.
And then, they were threatened. They were told, they could lose their retirements and things of that nature. But, the thing about it is, it was that somebody went after the aviation committee, and they wanted them not to allow their commercial pilots to give information to our Congress. Okay, well, that's a really bad thing when our intelligence community can shut down the aviation group and not let their pilots tell about UFO reports to Congress. That is unheard of. And I think that one of the things that I noted that, was so significant is that I think in all of it, it tells us that if we've got somebody that's controlling this, I mean, it's kind of like this Representative Burkett said, be careful about a government who does not trust its people. Well, clearly, from the other people that are testifying and talking in this C-SPAN thing, that they are saying that our government group is not transparent, and that when they tried to go in and get information, that they were told, I think they invited them in to do like a briefing, and they said it had nothing to do about UFOs, but yet they've been led to believe, the congressmen have been led to believe they were going to get information. And then they told them, oh no, we can't tell you if UFOs are real. Really? So, the question was, well, is it domestic? Is it foreign? What is it? And the thing about it is they didn't want to answer anything. Well, we know certainly, and I know that I've said this even before I knew that that Representative Burchett even said it. I said, if China and Russia had this technology, if Germany had this technology, which I think that Hitler definitely had connections and had found some stuff by the UFO type, instruments and technology that he was using, that he was on to something with somewhere.
Right.
But if they had that technology, Laura, do you think that they wouldn't use it and be running this world right now? Oh, without doubt.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting is a lot of this started coming out right after those balloons appeared over the United States. A lot of people don't know that there was more balloons were reported than what was being reported to us.
Right.
And the one up in Alaska, they at first they put out that it was a balloon, then they pulled it back, then they said that they had shot it down, but after that, reports like under the wire were coming out that it was cylindrical, that it wasn't a balloon, and that it was a UAP that they had captured. And that's why right after that, when the next one came, that's when we saw them circle and surround it over Lake Michigan, because that one was, we saw them. They handled it differently after the Alaska one.
Yes.
You know what? It's really interesting too about all this stuff that's coming out to distract us from all the other stuff that's been going on in the world too. So while this is
with all these distractions, though, I mean, what do you ignore and what do you pay attention to?
Exactly.
Well, they wag the dog.
The devil's MO is to cause confusion and chaos.
Right. Exactly.
And that's exactly what he wants to do with with these situations here.
Big John, we on Wednesday nights we talked about how the Vatican has all but publicly
acknowledged
that they're looking for something with their Lucifer telescope, Mount Graham in Arizona.
That's right.
They even said they will baptize an alien.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing is that NASA recently hired a priest to tell the world that there is astrobiology. In other words, life somewhere else. Isn't that a little odd that they just hired somebody to do that because they think that you're going to rewrite the Genesis stories? Oh, that's just too coincidental to not be like.
Yeah, no.
That's right. That it was set up for the moment that they are getting ready, because they know it's coming.
Oh, yeah.
They know it's coming. So they're trying to get their group together to be able to handle when all of this starts coming out. I mean, you've got people like President Jimmy Carter, who lives just not too far up from me here in Georgia. You know, he had a UFO experience. He was never shy about talking about it. I mean, Plains, Georgia is probably maybe 100 miles from me, 60, 70 miles, something like that. And clearly he had seen that along with his Sunday school class and whatever else that was going on with his sighting. So, you know, you've got credible people, doctors, scientists, military, and that's one thing that this Representative Tim Burchett is talking about. Since he took over this, he said he's had so many people that are credible coming up to him and saying, look, I've seen these things. I was afraid to talk about them. If I talked about them, I was afraid there would be a problem. He said that there are veterans that have come just at him with rapid rates, saying that they have witnessed these things, but they were always so afraid because they were threatened with losing their benefits if they ever told. So the intelligence community or committee or whatever they are within our government has been blocking every UFO UAP release that it could do for years.
Oh, Joy, are you familiar with the Jackie Gleason, Richard Nixon alien story?
I've heard a little bit about it, and I'm sure that I've read that because it seems familiar. But as far as the details right now, me trying to bring it up in my brain, if you tell me about it, I'll probably go, yes, I remember.
Richard Nixon was down in Florida, and he had ditched his Secret Service, and he had gone to the house of Jackie Gleason, and he picked him up and he took him, drove him himself to show him that they had captured an alien that was being held at the Air Force Base in Florida. And
I remember that.
Jackie Gleason's wife said he was never the same again. Whatever my husband saw that night changed
him forever. Yeah, I remember that story. And there was also the story about General Eisenhower, you know, that went supposedly to a military base and actually had some type of negotiations.
Right. And his granddaughter has actually verified that quite recently, where there was some sort of deal made where, look, we'll give you so many human beings every year to do whatever you want with in exchange for technology.
Exactly. And, you know, and this is understandable because let's look at the numbers of people who go missing in our national forests and we never find them.
Right.
Men, women, girls, children, and the whole 9 yards. And then, you know, this recent release of the movie Sound of Freedom about the pedophiles and the pedophilia rings that are going on all over the world and how all of that's happening. You just go, what are all these people really maybe being used for?
Right.
And I think that right there, you know, the fact that Eisenhower's, you said granddaughter had verified that he had met like that, and that was the negotiation. I fully believe, I mean, from everything they've ever studied, this serpent lineage has to have human blood to maintain itself in the physical realm. And I think there's where you got all this adrenochrome. You get where they, you know, a long time ago in some of the stories about especially the royal families, that they had the virgins, they drank their blood. I mean, there has just been a lot of this documented that's not conspiracy theory.
Let me make a correction. Laura Eisenhower is President Eisenhower's great-granddaughter.
Well, if she was willing to come forward and say something, I mean, I've read the stories about him being taken there and how, you know, the negotiation was for just what you're saying. And it makes sense. It literally makes sense. If you understand that these things are part of the fallen world, the fallen angels, demonic beings, and that kind of stuff, they have been here with us since the beginning. That's why you see these UAPs, UFOs, so many of them coming out of the ocean. They're, you know, around the volcanic activities and things of that nature. What's down there? Hell.
Well,
hell
you have
is
to
below
understand
us.
too. You got to understand too. These fallen beings are in parts of the world where it's blocked off for the public general population to be able to see, such as Antarctica.
That's
I
right.
mean, look at the stuff that's been coming out about Antarctica recently. I've been listening to a podcast it's called, his name is Sean Ryan. He has a podcast on YouTube and Apple, and he's talking to these people who are whistleblowing that work down in Antarctica. They talking about these things that's
Yep, they are
happening
talking about
and
Yes.
all the fallen technology that they are using against us. So
Yes.
when you were talking earlier about Hitler gaining access to that, I believe he had access, and I believe
Oh yeah.
that we never won that war
right.
Well,
because he
you know,
had those types
right.
of materials with him.
That's right. And the thing about the thing that most people don't understand is that he would get his groups together in a little castle they called Camelot. And they would do this remote viewing to
Yep.
tap into the spiritual realm with these beings.
Yep.
And then when you think about, you know, Admiral Byrd, when he came back, he specifically said that when you went into Antarctica, that there was a hollow earth, that there was stuff down in there.
Admiral
everything
Byrd,
was
his first expedition was completely scientific, and he went back with an armada. He was
Yes.
scared at what he saw, and he went down there with a full armada, Navy, you know, the military. But when he first went down there, whatever it was, it was completely scientific.
Yes. He was trying to figure out what was going on. But the thing about it is, this is a serious situation because we're not talking about one or two little fallen angels. We're
Right.
talking about major fallen angels, major demonic beings that have always been here with us. I mean, Jesus himself cast 2,000 out of one person.
Yeah.
I mean, scripture proves this stuff is here with us and was here with us when he was here. You can look
That's
at
what-
some of the paintings, even in Egypt. They show UFOs on the walls. I mean, this is not something that has not been all the time with us. And so
remember when Jesus was healing and trying to cast out demons from the person, the demon asked, is it time for you to come get us? And he asked them who they are. They say, we are legion, for we are
Legion.
many.
that's right.
And they went, guess where they went? Into
the
pigs
pigs.
and
Into
into
the
the
pigs.
sea.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I've been showing some pictures. These are ancient pictures depicting, you know, here's the crucifix. And if
Yes.
you look closely, the crucifix is being watched by these aliens. Here's another one with showing the Virgin Mary. And what do we have in the background? We have another UFO.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one depicting the crucifix with other things. In the Bible, Ezekiel
Yes.
saw the wheel. The
Yes.
wheel was, you know, or the burning chariot. You know, those were unidentified. I guess you could say those were UAPs as well.
Right. And then all the unusual kinds of beings that he saw that were not what we have now on this planet. And I don't believe it was back there either, that he had to have seen those things and they were unique in themselves. Well, the thing about it is, it's been going on a long time. And Hitler had tapped into that. And I'm like Ernie. The war may have looked like it went away from Hitler, but Hitler got all of his top scientists out of that country by way of the Vatican, putting them in priestly robes and distributing them down to South America. And
putting
when
them in
they
key
went,
roles throughout world governments too.
that's right. And then under Project Paperclip, we developed NASA, and the Russians developed their cosmonaut program. They were Germans who had been doing atrocities to killing people and children who came into our country as Hail Mary, you know, praise them for their scientific knowledge. And they never stood trial for anything that they were actually involved in.
Yeah, it's you know, it's the same thing that we're seeing right now with these you know, with these child trafficking, this human trafficking, is
Yes.
you know, you're never going to see the true criminals be tried and convicted. Same thing happened during the Nuremberg. Yeah, a couple people got thrown to the wolves, but for the most part, everybody walked. And even the people that got convicted, did they really go to prison? Were they really punished? Was it a dog and pony show?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with this. You know, you're never going to see the complete list or the complete list of Epstein. You're not going to.
That's right.
As long as the people who names are on that list are running the shots, there's never going to be convictions.
That's right. There's no accountability.
No accountability whatsoever.
I mean, there is nobody watching the hen house. The foxes are running wild. The swamp is overrun with lizards. And that's the thing about what you can clearly see from this Representative Tim Burchett with this, thing that he did with C-SPAN, is that he's encountering these particular agencies that are run as even I want to quote Trump, wanted to drain the swamp. They're run by these entities that literally are not going to give up this information if they don't have to. Right. And the fact that we've got service men and women who are encountering these things on a daily basis, and the fact that they're screaming, we could be hurt trying to defend our country, because as he mentioned in the thing that you have on the screen, is that there's been 14 known near misses where somebody in a airplane flying for the United States was almost in a mid-air collision with these things.
Right.
But yet nobody seems to feel like that, there deserves to be an answer from our government. And I really was just very taken back when they got to talking about that they had gone down to Elgin Air Force Base, Elgin, that's down in, is it Florida? And they were denied any information from a commanding general. I was like, how can a commanding general stand up against the Congress who pays his salary,
right,
and not allow them to talk? They were supposed to be going down there to talk to, I guess it's Eglin, to talk to the pilots who had actually come forward and had started being whistleblowers.
Right.
And so our Congress guys, this little group of guys, and I think one of the ladies, they went down there to talk to the pilots who were saying, we've seen these things, whatever. And when they got down there, that's when they, encountered this particular commanding general, and he would not let them talk to the pilots or see the pictures that they said they had. And then, the Pentagon stood up against them and argued that they were not going to let them, in there, and they blocked them from being able to talk to them. Well, I think that when somebody is credible as a whistleblower, and I know there's a lot of people who just really want to get on TV and get popular.
Right, for 15 minutes of fame, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely.
But this is not that.
When you've got veterans, when you've got pilots who have decades under their belts, thousands of hours of flying time, who know the skies better than anybody, I would believe a pilot before I would believe somebody on the ground.
Exactly. And the fact is that they were saying, what they were finding out from these pilots that are talking to them, that they interrogate them so bad when they come in, if they report one of these things, because there's supposed to be a whistleblower's protection thing set up.
Yeah.
And when these guys say that they come in to tell that they are interrogated so bad, that that they confiscate the video evidence, and then they put them through like all this 8 hours of harassment, debriefing, in other words, and then they mark them as like troublemakers, and in some cases have messed up people's careers because they just came in and said, hey, I saw something, I really want to report it. It was, it was really real. And then they went through that kind of interrogation. And then the threats to, if you say anything, we're going to put you out of the military as, dishonorable. You don't get any retirement. We're going to ruin you.
They're going to ruin your career, your life.
That's right.
Here you've put in decades of your time into, whether it's, in the military in our military, or uh, as a pilot for an airline. I mean, that's, you put a lot of time and energy and money into that career.
That's exactly right. And now you've got people who, who are calling for transparency.
Yeah.
And you're trying, it's a military person, to do it the right way. And then when you try to do it the right way, then you're ruined. And it's terrible, because you can clearly see, like one of the congressmen says, that there is some kind of powerful control of greed and corruption that is running our country. And that means that the people like us who are paying the taxes are not getting answers. We are not getting the truth. So our federal government is keeping this from the American people. And like one of them said, they keep saying, well, it can cause anxiety. And I remember way back when I would do interviews on this a long time ago, and people say, oh, yeah, but they're not going to let us know because most people are going to panic, and then that's going to cause a problem and people will do crazy things. Well, I'm going to tell you, people are probably going to do a lot of crazy stuff, Laura. Now, you and I and Ernie get this. But for people that have not been studying this and understand what we're dealing with, yes, when they come out and they start showing this, you're going to see people really panic. And you let those things start manifesting even worse than they are, just like you were going back and talking about those balloons and how all of a sudden there was more than we were told. Well, the interesting thing, they had never told us that NORAD was only looking at a certain level up in the sky, and tried to deny that NORAD had capability of looking at the lower objects in our sky. Really? I mean, any kind of thing flying over the United States, NORAD should have in their sights.
Absolutely. That's their job.
Mhm.
Exactly.
That's part of their name. North American, that's their sky they're supposed to protect. I think a lot of this goes back to 1938, when H.G. Wells did his Orson Welles did his War of the Worlds on the radio.
Yes.
And it caused people to panic and commit suicide. And they saw what an alien invasion would do to the American psyche at that point.
That's right. And I fully believe it was a trial run,
yes,
to gauge the temperature of how people handle stuff.
How they would react. Orson Welles he was part of the club.
Yes.
Let's
very
just
much
put it that way. He was
whenever you are in the Illuminati and the secret societies, they are the ones behind what we are being kept from.
Right.
It's like you and I and Ernie cannot go into the Vatican. We can't go into the Vatican archives. We can't go to the British Museum and go into their archives. And we can't go to the Smithsonian and go to their archives, simply because we're not either blue blood status or have that secret society connection.
We don't know the secret handshake to get in.
That's right.
Right. And the thing is, too, we gotta understand, while all this stuff's coming out, this is what they want. They want us to have this tribulation and to get the public upset to the point where we need to do something about this. Now we're seeing, disclosure with the UFOs, stuff with the Sound of Freedom. We're seeing all this stuff, and it's all going to come about where the whole cabal is going to fall. And it's designed to be built that way, to fall, so they have a savior to come in to save the world from all of that. And once that happens and peace is established on his land for a short season, that's when the sudden destruction will occur in levels that nobody will ever witnessed in their lives.
That's right. Yeah, it sets up the Antichrist.
Exactly.
Yeah, they put out the information. You've got TV shows like the History Channel that put out, unexplained, or what is it called? Ancient
aliens.
Ancient aliens, yes.
What to do with looks like he got electrocuted with his hair sticking out.
Giorgio,
yeah,
I like Giorgio. Yeah, I mean, but you got to understand that information they're putting out is so
skewed.
Yeah, scoured. It's so it's so whitewashed.
Yeah, when I did a little series with the History Channel and was up there and filmed, and I got asked a million questions in a green room, and most everything went on the floor. But what they wanted to use to push and promote the agenda for the program.
Right.
And I felt like that I was being interrogated about all the things that I knew, that somebody had me there to know what I knew. And then they used, some of the things that I talked about in the series, but they dictate how they want that series to go. So anybody that doesn't follow suit into that, they just crop it out and can push it in. It's like taking the Bible
That's correct.
and wanting to prove something and breaking it up.
I did a documentary for Oxygen Network on internet cults.
Mm-hmm.
And the interview that I did in front of the camera was about 3 hours long, and they used probably about 10 minutes of that.
Mm-hmm. It's quite amazing when they have an agenda, how they want it to be said. It's not, and you would think history, discovery channels, those kind of things, travel channels, that all that stuff that's on there should be proven true, but it's not. And it's like, the ancient alien things to make you think that there are aliens out there, like in Pleiades or wherever.
Well, they're trying to discredit the Book of Genesis. They're trying to push the evolution. They're trying to push the ancient aliens coming down here to seed us and create us, and that is all to get us ready, get the public ready for when the Antichrist, for when this person, this is my opinion on what's going to happen. They're getting us ready for full alien disclosure. They're getting us ready for this alien, and it will be alien beings. It will be little green men. It will be grays. It will be some sort of thing that we're familiar with the big eyes and the long fingers and it will be something along that line, because this is something that they've been pushing since the 1950s. So it will be, that's probably what we're going to see.
That's right.
And what's going to happen is, we're going to get some sort of conflict, and that's when the Antichrist will come on scene and broker the peace treaty.
Yes. Yeah, there's something major going to happen, and whatever it is significant, because something in the Holy Land is going to make everybody converge there. I don't know whether it's the Ark of the Covenant that they're going to go after. Somebody's going to go. They're all going to converge in that area of God's chosen people's land.
Absolutely.
And there is, when you start looking at things like water, potable water, and who can desalt water. Well, Israel is probably one of the best at being able to do that. But our potable water, the water that's not contaminated, I think the last time I looked was down to 23% of the water on Earth is actually like that. Everything else has got some type of contamination in it. And with the amount, chemicals. That's right. And with the amount of heat and the increase in heat, like we were talking about before we came on the show tonight, the increase in that heat is only going to make the storms worse. It's going to make the toxins worse. It's going to make the oceans turn more into cesspools where you've got the algae that starts blooming, neurotoxins, and then it's just a cycle of death. And then the fact that already they're talking about, even in the United States at the White House, about going along with some type of putting something in the sky to stop the rays of the sun. And there's always been this thing about chemtrails, and now where that has been a conspiracy theory, now we're finding out that's in the case, and that they're looking at spraying these aluminum particles so that it reflects the sun, because they know the scriptures tell us the sun is going to scorch this planet. We're not going to have a flood again. Right. What's coming is we're going to literally have heat beyond measure, which fuels the hurricanes, which fuels the droughts, the famine, and like I'm saying, the killing of the fish, because as the water gets hotter and hotter, we're becoming like a boiling boiling pot of water. It's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And when that starts happening, everything gets worse. And then on top of that, we're told in Revelation that there is a star called wormwood that's coming, that's going to hit this planet, and a third of everything is going to die from that. So just imagine that, the increase in the heat, the increase in the storms, and like we are seeing, when you have hotter heat, hotter indices, then the hailstorms get bigger and bigger. And what does Scripture tell us? Those hailstorms are going to be like 1,000 pounds of ice falling out of the sky at us. There's no place to run. There is no place to hide.
I asked you before we went live, did you see Italy? Italy got hit with hail. Like I couldn't believe the ice chunks that were floating in the streets.
That was unreal what I saw floating in the streets. That was absolutely amazing. And the thing about it is, as we heat up, and we're already seeing this, that they're saying that people are not able to sleep right now, especially in these areas where there's high heat, because your body can't cool down. And if your body can't cool down, you can't rest. Well, if you can't rest, then, you know, when you don't have people sleeping and resting, then you get more mental health problems and beatings and drinkings and drugs of trying to deal with all of this. So, you know, here we've got a grid that's so old in the United States trying to pull electricity.
Yeah.
And as we get hotter, then we've got these people pushing electric cars to plug in so that you take even more electricity from a grid that's not stable. What are we setting ourselves up for? Right now in South Georgia, I mean, we've had a week or more of temperatures in the triple digits with indices that are like 110.
Yeah.
You literally, if you didn't have any electricity and you had no way to cool off, the majority of people, if they are young and old and sick, are going to die.
Yes, exactly. You know, when I used to live out in Phoenix, there was a joke that, you know, in the summertime, when it would get up into the hundreds, 118, 116, somewhere in there, you know, we would have to remind our friends, if you drank water today, poof up that brain, you're dehydrating your brain, it's shrinking, you know, because people would get crazy.
Right.
And you know, it's interesting too, because when we're looking at the temperature of the oceans right now, that has a dire effect on our poles. Look at Antarctica, in the North Pole, where, you know, ice is melting. And me and Lori talked about, I don't know if we talked about this on an episode or whatnot, but giants are coming out of stasis.
Yes, we talked about it on one of the episodes. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Because of the temperatures. Look at the guys. I don't know. I've got Ventusky up on the screen for you guys. Does anybody, and I'm going to ask, because I know Dr. JOYE and Ernie already know the answer to this question, but for people that are watching it and in the chat room, what do you see different about this map that I'm showing you? I want to remind you guys, we are in hurricane season. What are you seeing on this map right now that has you going, what the heck? Because, I mean, this is something that we don't see. I don't think I've ever seen the first named hurricane. Oops. Let me pull it back a little bit. Look how far up it is.
I mean, you're past the United States.
Yeah, up in the Canada region. Which those temperatures should never be primed to generate a hurricane.
That's right. They should. Those waters have got to be that warm to do what we're seeing. And never in our history have our waters been this warm. And they're getting hotter because they broke 180 records this past week in nighttime temperatures. And when the nighttime temperatures are staying in the 90s, they're breaking records of what would have been the record for the daytime temperature. We're talking about consistent record-breaking things. And I did not know this. I did not know when you lose that moisture in the air for the nighttime, that your trees have the respiratory system of trees will stop working, and they will quit taking in carbon dioxide and putting out oxygen.
Oh my goodness.
And it kills their root systems. So that I had never read about, but every plant has like a respiratory system. It's called like a stoma or something like that, which takes in the carbon dioxide and puts out the oxygen. Well, when you don't have those temperatures right, it will shut down their respiratory systems.
Did you know that when you hear the birds start to tweet and start to sing before the sun comes up, do you know what the purpose is?
No.
To wake up that respiratory system of those trees.
Well, I can understand the vibratory pattern because everything that's alive, it's like I was talking about in my new book, Be Smart, is that every living thing on this planet is singing with the DNA of its own song, and it's all correlating with each other, because when human resonance, or the resonance of the earth, the fact that our bodies are tuning forks, everything is supposed to be in harmony. And it's not right now at all.
Exactly. You had messaged me when I was reporting on the Schumann resonance.
Yes.
That was just off the charts. We had never seen anything. And they pulled back about 2 or 3 days later and said, "Oh, there wasn't anything. We were calibrating the system."
Oh, gee.
Yet last week it spiked at 180 again for a short period of time.
Well, we can tell that Earth is out of balance. If anybody cannot understand the numbers of fish and birds and everything that are dying all over this planet, and we're not talking about one or two.
No.
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of animals that are dying on a daily basis, and it is from the change of our environment. Clearly, we are in an upheaval. And I tell you this, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, like I talk about in Be Smart, they are very aware of this. These sustainability goals and objectives that they have put forward are supposed to be in place by 2020, 2030.
2030, yeah.
They're trying their best to get all organizations that are going to play their game, which are the major ones, to do exactly what they're saying. And then everybody else is going to fall under line with it. That's why Prince William has the Earthshot Prize, everything.
They're going to be taxing us for oxygen.
That's exactly right.
They're going to be. It's every single apocalyptic movie you've seen since the 1970s is going to come true. All the movies where you saw, us walking around in respirators, or getting so hot that you can't breathe outside. People only go out during the night. People are living going underground. Those things, they are pushing. They are causing this. It is not the human beings. When God created this planet, he created it to be self-sustaining and self-healing. When he told Adam and Eve, go out and procreate, go out and he didn't say, but stop when you get to a certain number. Every single thing, every single problem on this planet that is detrimental to it is caused by corrupt governments. We don't have a food shortage. There's no food shortage. It's caused by corrupt governments.
Yeah. With all this stuff happening too, doesn't it sound like the second trumpet in Revelation 8?
I think it does. I think that we're really pushing all these trumpets.
Mountain burning with fire, volcanoes, third part of the sea becoming blood, third part of the creature were in the sea, had life, died.
There's just a lot of this that, I'm always amazed that John the Revelator wrote this stuff 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And for it all to happen at the same time, we're the generation that's seeing it all converge.
Well, when people sit there and they say, but that's not what John meant, we've got to understand that when John the Revelator wrote what he saw, he had to write it in words that he had to comprehend.
That's right.
He saw things. He saw rockets. He saw nuclear weapons. He saw airplanes. He saw tanks. He saw these things, but he didn't have the words to put it down in his writings. He had to find words that he knew at that time.
That's right. That's right. And I think that you can look and see, like even scripture told us that at the end of days, it's going to be like a woman in travail. And we know when a woman is pregnant and she gets ready to deliver a baby, those last months coming up to those few weeks and days before that baby's born are horrific with pain and suffering. And I mean, it's consistent going. And that's what we're seeing. It's not like we haven't had hurricanes. It's not like we haven't had earthquakes. It's not like we've not had plagues, but we've never had all of them at the same time getting closer together and getting bigger and stronger. I mean, the convergence is just amazing to
Look
me.
at these storms that we've had across the south and southeast here in the United States just in the last 8 weeks.
That's right. And, you know, we're having in South Georgia, I grew up here. And so, you know, I worked out in the fields, cropped tobacco, picked cotton, did all those kinds of things, driving tractors, planting, everything. And the heat that we have now, we could not stand to have been out there and to have done what I did. We didn't have cabs with air-conditioned tractors. I'm talking about when I drove a tractor, it was sitting on a hot metal seat holding a steering wheel that would burn your hand if you touched it in the wrong place. You could not have been out there in this kind of heat working without passing out.
Correct.
Because the work was strenuous. It was all day long. You had to get the crops in. And clearly, I mean, I was looking at the way our crops look, how we have like extreme weather of flooding, and then everything starts drowning, and then we have extreme heat. And I don't care if you do have a pivot irrigation system, when you put out water like that during the day, it draws the plant's root system to the surface.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're killing your plant because you're bringing the root system to the surface for the
That's
sun
why
to
you should
scorch
never
it
water your grass or your
in the
trees
middle of the
or your
day.
plants until after the sun goes down.
So it's pretty serious because, you know, now when we get a black cloud coming up, the first thing they start screaming is, you know, strong thunderstorm and then tornado. When I was growing up here, if we didn't have a tornado, we might have a little bit of wind, but we didn't have tornadoes. And I know tonight at church, I was talking to a lady and I had seen the radar where there was supposedly some activity above where I live or where I used to live. And I was like, that says there's some swirl in that particular thunderstorm. Well, sure enough, tonight she verified that exactly where I had seen it on radar, that they had had a tornado.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not like it's every day. If we get some kind of weather here, that somebody ends up having something like tornadic activity. We've never had that.
We've had so many here in Chicago in the last month, Joy. It's crazy.
That's right. In the craziest places. And just like this hurricane way up there in the north. I mean, that should, if anything, should tell us from scientific data how hot the ocean is. And that's a danger. Because the more
we said before we went live that we think that within, if it doesn't happen this year, it will happen in the near future where we will see a Category 6 or Category 7 hurricane.
Exactly. There's no doubt in my mind that it's going to get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get better. And, you know, even let's look at the sun. They said that we were in, the sun's in 11-year cycles. And they said that 2025 was going to be the end of the 11-year cycle. And they were predicting so many sun flares and coronal mass ejections and possibly blackouts here in the United States and the world. Well, now what they had predicted, you know, in their prediction models for 2025 has already been exceeded now in 2023.
Yeah.
So if we're not at the end and we have 2 more years of this and we are already far exceeding what it was supposed to be like in 2025, can you imagine where we're headed in the next 2 years? I mean, the sun the other day had coronal mass injections completely around it. I mean, you could just see them going across the sun. This is unprecedented.
Like it did when we were kids.
No, if you go outside, the sun feels like it's burning you.
Yeah.
It does not feel, that's what I'm saying. If I had been working in tobacco or doing anything like that, like I used to, and driving a tractor, like I say, with nothing, no cab, anything, and you're sitting out in the sun from like noon, I'm talking about like wake up at daybreak and stay in that field until you go to eat some lunch and come back and stay there till almost sundown. You couldn't stand it,
No,
Lori. I mean, you literally would bake to a crisp.
Yeah, exactly.
So things are really, not doing too good. And I really think that some of this chemtrail stuff, I was reading an article about the geoengineering that they were talking about, that they were trying to do, and that was to, to put chemicals in the air. And they were saying that they had used, these aluminum particles to be able to kind of reflect, to keep the sun down. There was some talk, I guess a year or so ago, about putting some type of umbrella up in the sky that you could move it from one place to the other. Well, the problem is when you start messing with that, it disperses different aspects of what is a normal cycle in an area to another cycle, cycle in another area. And then you start getting all kinds of problems. And I know in the article they were saying that you could clearly tell the difference between, let's say, a normal trail, condensation trail behind an aircraft. I mean, I grew up, like I say, in the South Georgia, and you got clear skies, so you can look at everything. And we used to see those planes come across, and they had those little bitty contrails, and they would kind of, at the end of it, you see it get less and less and less as it moved across the sky. Now those things get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're saying that is the chemtrail, and no longer is that a condensation trail. So, we look at HARP. HARP was supposed to have put some of those, I think it was nails, up in the ionosphere so they could bounce off stuff. Well, now they're saying that they're putting that stuff in the chemtrails, and they're using like HARP and some other people that have that ability to use that kind of particle beam and move stuff from place to place. You think about this, we even had
there's mobile HARP units that travels on a ship.
Yes. And it's all used by radio frequency transmissions. And that's the thing. Everything, like I talk about in my new book, Be Smart, is electromagnetic low frequency waves. Everything here, we are electromagnetic. So when you start playing with HARP and the particles and the atmosphere, and you're using electromagnetic capability to manipulate that, our bodies, like I mentioned earlier, are tuning forks. It's affecting every living thing on this planet. And to me, our air quality, I know in Atlanta the other day, was in orange. So they were like telling people, if you're old, if you're, got any kind of problems, don't get out in the heat. Because the air quality was so bad, supposedly from the smoke that came out of Canada. Was in our particular area.
Here too. Yeah. Ernie too.
It's been pretty bad here.
You've been worse than me.
Yeah, we've been getting hammered this month. But yeah, I mean, ours with air particulates in the upper 150s to close to 200, like on a consistent basis for days at a time. But yeah, I mean, you combine that ELF frequencies, I mean, in conjunction with what's in the things we're not supposed to talk about, we tend to forget that as well. I mean, that stuff in there, it's been proven to be some type of mechanical nanoorganism that is flowing through the veins and assembling. And those things are assembling at alarming rates, especially when they're near certain conditions, such as low frequency Wi fidelity signals, or like using multimedia waves from like 5G or 6G, whenever that actually becomes into fruition. I mean, I don't believe we're there, even though they say it's 5G. I don't think it's true 5G, but I mean, this stuff is all primed, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about all the stuff that's going on with crypto.
Oh yeah, and they've got to get everything. That's right. They got to get everything in place. So when the crisis happens, you're going to have to go down and get that mark of the beast, because they're going to put all that money in cryptocurrency and you cannot get it unless you do exactly what they say. And these digital things, they are being put in place with the ability for them to manipulate what they give you. In other words, like I mentioned one time before, if you're a diabetic, you can't have candy, you can't have this. If you try to go down and purchase that with your money, it's going to be denied. They are literally going to control everything that they want you to do. They'll know if you bought too many eggs, if you didn't buy enough milk, if you bought too much milk, who are you supplying? I mean, the algorithms have been in place for a long time about your purchases. If you don't believe that, then you are just walking around with your head in the clouds.
They just put the Fed now, it went active 2-3 days ago.
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, they're going to be able to, I mean, they can already monitor us now. Like I said, I did this a video the other day. They can already monitor us now through our cards that we use. But now it's all going to go into one clearinghouse where they have access immediately to everything you do real time. They don't have to go through your bank or through wherever your card is through. Now it's going to go dump into one system and they can pull it just like that.
Well, that's why they control you.
Yeah.
And once you get to the point that you can't buy, sell, or trade, you either take the mark or you die. You got the choice, like we've talked about. You're going to have the choice in whatever, but it's going to come down. Either you take it or you don't. And if you don't, this is where you're going for not taking it. If you take it, then you're going to be locked into artificial intelligence, controlled, connected, and totally manipulated. And then that's when it says, that the abyss is going to be released, and these things are going to come out, and they're going to sting the people with the mark of the beast, and they're going to have boils all over them. And the thing about it is, you can't die.
Right.
It says you want to die, and you can't die.
Yeah, they will seek out death, and they cannot find it. Absolutely.
They'll be gnashing the teeth, and it's going to be painful. Sores will appear all over their bodies. I mean, we're already starting to witness that. I just actually, Lori, I've seen on sports news that another player is now sidelined for
clots.
Legs and lungs.
Yeah.
Well, we're noticing that here in this area too. It's like people who were jumped up and had to either take these shots or whatever, that the younger crowd are starting to develop serious clots and deaths. I mean, cardiovascular system problems, increase in the types of breast cancer and different kinds of cancers escalating. Young people that should be perfectly healthy off the chart. Off the chart.
Yeah, exactly.
They know not what they do, but we have a Most High God that will seek judgment upon those people. So we have to remain vigilant in the faith and know that God has our backs. And
we also need to remember this is just flesh too. I mean, this is not this is a temporary body. Our glorified bodies, we're not going to feel pain. This is going to be gone in an instant, and we're going to be moved on and glorified. So, I think that's where a lot of people, they get stuck in the flesh. I don't want to get sick. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want to suffer. So we just got to remember that we're just passing through. This is our temporary home.
Right, because it says clearly that this world was not when Jesus was here, we clearly knew that he was not of this world. His kingdom was not of this world. We know that Satan is the ruler. We live in a fallen world, and Satan's army is really working to, I think, corral every human being in a corral where you cannot move, you cannot get out. It's massive control. It's to put you in that beehive mind, to connect you just like the Tower of Babel back with, one mind, one thought, one way. I mean, that's where they're headed. And, right now, this social credit system and central bank digital currency that they are really starting to show has ability to lock you down, that they are, introducing and tested in countries across the world.
Mhm.
So it's not something that's going away. It is something that's being tested right now to see what can be done, and then the importance of how do they use satellite surveillance to monitor it worldwide.
Isn't it interesting that they have this ability to monitor us? They have
Mm-hmm.
this ability to keep track of the things that we do. They have satellites that can pinpoint a license plate from hundreds of miles away, yet thousands of people disappear without a trace.
And that's what I'm saying. They know where those people go.
Yeah.
It literally is, it's kind of like the UFO phenomena. They have a government within a government that all these things, they're there to get those things before anybody else knows anything about it. And they're all connected, so they never tell on each other.
Right.
So only when people accidentally run into it, and the thing about it is, even when they did the first briefings in front of our Congress, those naval intelligence people got up and said, the one thing we can tell you is that these things are increasing daily all over the world. Well, as they increase, you can't hide it, because now we've got cell phones that can take beautiful pictures. I took a picture the other night of the moon, and it looked like I could blow it up, and it was perfectly in focus.
Yeah.
Years ago, if you tried to take a picture like that, you had to have a telescope on your camera, which I had to be able to take lunar pictures. But now my cell phone can do that, and I can do whatever and make it just a perfect moon. So because we've got the technology and the pixels that will pick up things that we can't even sometimes see with our natural eye, and then you add the element of being able to see in ultraviolet light and in infrared light, that's when we started really seeing stuff, because in ultraviolet light, they have started seeing so many of these things in the sky. So when you look at advanced technology that we've got with the military that should be looking for everything out there in case China or Russia comes up with it, we're using the best technology to track these unidentified aerial phenomena. And I know that was one thing that the guy talked about that's going to be doing the hearing, this representative. He said, when they briefed us before, they brought these stupid things in that a guy took with a cell phone. And when I guess Smith asked them, well, where's the thing at? And they couldn't even back it up to show somebody where the little, UFO thing was. And so what he's saying is, why did you bring something that like stupid like that you don't even know how to work the machine to a congressional hearing on UFOs? It was to buffer having to tell the truth about something. And so Smith, those people that are really behind this now are saying they've already seen some pictures, they've already seen some things, and that those things that they've already seen, I guess, in their committee, which is kept kind of secret, should be showed to the American people. So I'm hoping that this Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock that we get to see real pictures of real things, because they said they're going to ask the difficult, tough questions and try to get the truth out there. And they even went on to say that if the government agencies don't go along with them, that they were going to do field operations and give the press the ability to be with them when they go in to try to get that stuff. So you can film it.
Well, I think Wednesday will probably be live if we can and show it, because I think this is something that needs to be watched. We need to hold our government's feet to the fire, and we demand these answers. We don't live in the 1950s anymore, where men in black can come up, tell us that we've seen swamp gas, and gaslight us into believing we didn't see anything.
Exactly. And that's exactly what's been going on, because they could go do that. I mean, people were not connected like today, where we have the internet, and I can talk to somebody in England and France and wherever about UFOs, where a long time ago, people in your town, if you were the only person to see it, who do you tell? Who do you report it to? I mean, the first time that, like I say, that I wrote these things down because I thought they was kind of unusual. And when I found out there was an organization that Walt Andrus started called MUFON, I couldn't wait to try to get a hold of his telephone number. I mean, that's back in the days when you had to call a operator and say, I think it's some kind of place and it's someplace out here. And I think the name of it is this, and get a number to get a hold of somebody to even talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, the guys that put together MUFON, I give them props because it was, it was something that we needed for something, all of this to be put in one place. Whereas before, we had different agencies working different things. You weren't talking to the same guys. And this MUFON, I'll put it back up on the screen, guys. MUFON literally tracks them.
That's right.
Here, let me pull it up and I'll show you. And I'll put the link to their site. I've talked with these guys before. I've actually worked with a couple of them over on Facebook. But you can go to tracking UFOs and you can search their database, and you can pull this up, and you need an account, but you can pull that up. Let's see which I've got. I'll go to the last 20 reports. I showed this earlier on the screen, but I'll pull it up again. And they have a database, and they list everything. They leave the dates. They even give them case numbers over here.
That's right.
Locations. This one was in Fountain Hills, Arizona. Person says erratic light, usually moving in various arced paths. Here's another one, dark green, shape of a pyramid. That was in Pine River, Minnesota. They do a really good job of keeping track.
And they have always, because I did consulting with them for a while. And the thing about it, they have field investigators that go out, but they have a form that's a scientific form. And I always thought the same thing like you are. It was a scientific study of what is going on. And so, people would call me and they would know that I would know about this, and they'd say, this is what happened, and I would try to get them to fill out the forms. The thing about it is they don't always have to have your name. You can do it anonymously. You can do it
anonymously, yeah.
And the thing they're looking for is if I see this thing in Georgia, let's say one night at 10 o'clock, and it looks like this, and this, and I'll report it. And then you see it in Alabama, and then the next person sees it in Texas,
right.
And then the next person, then we can track, on radar, if we can get radar images. Or we can say, how fast was it moving? If I saw it at 8 o'clock here and you saw it at 9 o'clock somewhere in Alabama, well, it took an hour to get there. What kind of speed was it at? You can look at the scientific analysis of the craft. If it was the same, you have more witnesses. So that's why MUFON was so much wanting to people to turn in these things so that they could literally look at the science behind it. Was it circular? Was it round? Was it, oblong? Was it triangular? I mean, all these things are crucial when you're doing scientific analysis. And what MUFON was trying to do was to get away from this conspiracy stuff, because too many people like myself, who, I'm a Christian. I'm not going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw. I got 20/20 vision. I don't drink. I've never used drugs. I am looking at this going, what is it? I want to know. And I'm giving you the details. I'm talking about minute details. I mean, my best friend will laugh and say, if one landed out there, I'd be out with a stethoscope trying to listen at it. She'd say, you're not scared of anything. And I'm like, no. The thing about it is, I want to know what it is. I'm not trying to fool me or anybody else. What I've seen with my own eyes tells me over the years, they're all the similarities, but they're different sizes and shapes of those things. The thing about it is technology that if our government had, we wouldn't be worried about China or Russia or nobody else. We would rule the world. Everybody would be answering to us.
Exactly.
So, I feel like this coming Wednesday is going to be a significant, if they can really get those people there to get on camera, show this stuff. I mean, this is the first time, Laura, that the human being on planet Earth has ever been told we are not alone. And
Yeah,
we have proof.
Wednesdays. I'm going to play it Wednesday. Hopefully, I can get they'll be broadcasting it publicly. I'm not sure if they're going to do that yet or not. But if they do, I'll make sure that we get it and that we broadcast it for everybody. Because I think, we do need to watch these things. I think we do need to hold this government accountable. There are things going on right now, and it's not always in our best interest. And we need to have those answers.
Well, I'm glad to see that they've got across the party. In other words, they got Republicans and Democrats as a part of this committee trying to get to the bottom of it. But they are encountering significant opposition. So when you see significant operations against somebody that's trying to reveal something,
Yeah.
Why? And
Right.
they can play national security. I mean, they were even saying it. They're playing national security out the yin yang. In other words, it's being overused to keep us as the American people from knowing the truth. But
Right.
it's happening in every country because the top dogs in every country, anybody that's running the world, there's a government within a government that makes it move internationally. There's not like little entities of people that's got control over anything. It's kind of like when we move from Republican to Democratic parties, the government doesn't shut down. It's still running. Well, who's running it?
Right. It's funny you should say that. I'm going to play a video that this says the same thing. And I kind of want to play it. I've played it for you guys before, but I want to play it again because it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to find. And I want to make sure that we have a record of this man. This was back in 2012 or 13.
13.
Take a listen.
Although as Minister of National Defense, I had sighting reports of UFOs. I was too busy to be concerned about them at the time because I was trying to unify the Army, Navy, and Air Force into a single Canadian Defense Force. And that itself was a kind of battle to the finish. So this was not high on my agenda. But about 10 years ago, I started getting interested due to a young man from Ottawa sending me material on the subject. I told him I was too busy to read it, but he had confidence that someday I would. It took me a while to get around to reading it, but I took it for my summer reading in 2005 and was really impressed with what was contained in it. And what I thought to myself is there are huge issues here, huge issues. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know what's going on because they're part of it. It's not just an isolated thing. I accept the invitation of Victor Vigiani, who's over here somewhere, and his cohort, Mike Bird, to speak to a symposium at the University of Toronto. And I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally. In the 1960s sometime, it was a flotilla of UFOs headed south that crossed into NATO territory in Europe. And the commander-in-chief of the Supreme Allied headquarters in Europe was naturally very shaken. Fortunately, or maybe divine providence, before the panic button was pushed, the flotilla turned around and headed back north. Obviously, they had thought maybe they were Russian and they were very concerned about it. Anyway, the investigation was launched into this whole subject, and a document was prepared which concluded that at least 4 species had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. And this is my own view at this stage as well. So, except for that, there are just a couple of things that we've talked about that I'd like to refer to. And one was that we were referring to them as they until this morning when Linda Moulton Howe, I think she was the first one, actually named 3 different species. I don't think we can any more refer to them as they because they're not an amorphous mass. They are different species and consequently may have different agendas. I don't think we can say that they all have the same agenda any more than we could say that the United States, China, and Russia had the same agenda. Our real interests may be very similar, but as of now, our perceived interests are still quite far apart. One more observation before I begin what I want to say, and that is that we spent quite a bit of time talking about the 66-year-old cadavers. And I was glad to have Linda this morning finally say that there are live ETs on Earth at this present time. And at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working with, first of all, he was scared out of his skin. But after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally they became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs in Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force and sharing technology with them. He wrote a book, incidentally, called Millennial Hospitality. There are 4 different versions, but Paula says that Millennial Hospitality number 2 is the best. I think that's the one I read, and it's a very interesting read if you want to sort of get inside the problem of what it's like to bump into these people floating across the terrain in the desert. Enough on that for now. My interest is in full disclosure. And my only caveat is I think probably I would say 95 to 98% full disclosure. I know of 1 or 2 things that I'm not sure should be in the public domain, at least yet. There will be someday, I'm sure, but not maybe immediately. But just as children survive the idea of the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus when they become adult, I think that tax-paying citizens are quite capable of accepting the new and broader reality that we live in a cosmos teeming with life of various sorts. The fact that some other civilizations are more advanced than we are may be humbling. It exists, and it's being kept secret by the same vested interests who control our destiny. Who are these vested interests, and what are they up to? Well, Senator, you were talking about a military junta. In my opinion, that is true, but I have broadened and deepened the definition to cabal. And the cabal comprises members of the 3 sisters: the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, and the Trilateral Commission, the International Banking Cartel, the Oil Cartel, members of various intelligence organizations, and select members of the military junta, who together have become a shadow government of not only the United States, but of much of the Western world. The aim of the game is a world government comprising members of the cabal who are elected by no one and accountable to no one. And according to Mr. Rockefeller, the plan is well advanced. Does this help you to understand why our civil rights are being taken away from us? I say us, because Canada too is included in the grand plan. So here,
Notice he says shadow government. He says cabal. He says that, you know, there's different shadow people running the government. They're hiding things. Everything that he said back in the early 2000s is being played out again right now.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, history always repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, back there where he was trying to talk about something that didn't have anybody coming forth with whistleblowers like they are now.
Right.
And the fact that Grush has come forward, and, you know, it's very clear that he was in Canada. Grush is the first time an official representative from the United States government had said, we are not alone in the universe. And he kept saying, we are definitely not alone. And the data points quite empirically that we are not alone. And he told the News Nation, it isn't just the spacecraft that we've recovered. We've got dead pilots. So
House Oversight plans UFO hearing after unconfirmed claims of crashed alien spaceship. But where's the one that I wanted to show that said that they actually had? Here it is. U.S. reportedly has 12 alien spacecraft under their control.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it interesting that these? Okay, so we need, and I say we as a public, we need to protect these whistleblowers.
Exactly.
Because we know for a fact that once you start, you know, talking, you know, you end up in, you know, having horrible accidents and being unalived. So we've got these whistleblowers that are coming out and they're talking about these UAPs or UFOs, but we've also got another whistleblower who's talking about things that are going on at the same time down in Antarctica. And I really think those two are connected.
Oh, I do too. I totally believe that Antarctica is where they are at. They are inside our Earth.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that's what we were talking about, Admiral Byrd and Hitler and all that was down in there doing what they were doing. And then they put the treaty up so that nobody can come and go from in that area. You know, you and I can't say we're going to take a trip down there and check it out. We can't go anywhere near it. So there's something there that's being watched that's very serious. And the other thing is, as the planet starts heating up, you know, we're already finding pyramids and things that are under the ice that are now being seen that we've never known were there until things started melting.
Well, there's not a coincidence that Byrd went down there in 57, NASA was created in 58, and in 59, the treaty was signed.
I mean, these were Germans. Who started NASA? Who started the cosmonaut program?
Correct.
It all, see,
let's talk about Buzz Aldrin. 2016, a lot of people were headed down. They were summoned, and that was the word that was used. They were being summoned down to Antarctica, Buzz Aldrin being one of them. Buzz Aldrin, when he got down there, they had to medevac him out of there because whatever that man saw scared the living hell out of him.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, the thing about him and being, you know, going up in space, there was a video where a man took a Bible and went at him and said, look,
well, you
if
swear
you went
on the Bible that
if you went to the moon.
There was a video, it was called Astronauts Gone Wild.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times.
I have to,
and even he was asked by a young girl about going on the moon. He admittedly said that
we didn't go.
He never went there.
We never went there.
But he, you know, when the guy tried to get him to put the hand on the Bible and swear he'd been to the moon, you know, he ended up hitting the guy. He punched him.
His demons roared their heads.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And I just think all the stuff with the moon, and now the real interest in the moon again, and all this. I mean, it's two all at one time, about the same time that we're about to find out there's something else out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. And we are so close to the revelation of the Antichrist and the things that are going to be, unveiled in the next few years, that I think this is the last piece of the puzzle, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think it is too. I mean, I think this is going to lead to major fear. It's going to cause some kind of crisis.
Yep.
The crisis will set us up for nothing but the mark of the beast.
Yep.
And the Antichrist will be the one that's going to oversee it all. And everybody is going to look to him to be their savior. And that's exactly what Satan wants, is for the world to scream, "You are our savior."
Exactly. And and you've got the Pope, who's going to, has already said, look, if these people, when these entities come down, we will baptize them.
Yes.
We will accept them. They are our brothers. They have been desensitizing us since the creation of cable TV, with all of this ancient astronaut theory crap.
That's right. It's a brainwashing technique to make you believe the lie.
Exactly.
Because they don't want the truth to be known, that these things are fallen angels and demonic beings, and they've been here all the time. Because if we know that, if we're knowledgeable, we're not going to play their game.
Right. Exactly. We're not going to play the game when it happens.
And that's why they kind of keep people like you and me and Ernie off here in these little podcast things, and not on CNN going, "Wake up, people. These things show up. This is what it is. Don't you do this and don't you do that."
Well, you know what? We do what we can on social media. We speak as loudly as we can. We put the information out there for as long as we can, and when they shut us down, we come back and we start doing it again and again and again. And it's that's what being a watchman is.
Amen.
Yes,
to that.
it is. And praise the Lord that God put us together so we can blow the trumpet loud enough that people that listen to us will be preparing their family. I mean, you need to be preparing your family just like you do in an earthquake emergency.
Yeah.
This is what's coming down. This is what we don't need to do. This is what this is going to be about. We'll meet here. We'll do this. Don't take the mark of the beast. I mean, you need to be preparing your family and your loved ones with this information so that when it starts happening, you don't fall victim to the lies. Because they're getting these lies in order. It will look so believable, Lori, that the people, it says, even if the days were not cut short, that flesh, the elect could not even make it through.
And those that be deceived can be. Even the elect will be deceived, exactly, in these last days. We're not going
to. Yeah, that leads me to a question, and it's kind of something I wanted to bring up to pretty much every single episode, but can never find a good place. And since we were talking about demons and ACs and all this other stuff that's going on with the disclosure and whatnot, can you give us an update on our good old friend William?
Well, the thing about it is, he has been sitting here waiting, the perfect person, greatest charisma, keeping his nose clean,
loved by everybody,
the Earthshot prizes, getting all, that's how you do. You stay kind of in the limelight a little bit, but under the covers, you're busy working with industries and charities, and you're building your repertoire with all the major corporations of the world doing business with you.
Yep.
Right.
Setting it up.
The temple has been is close to completion from what I've read. Seeing that's going on, all the stuff that's going on in Israel and Damascus now.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess they're in conflict. That's a big, big thing. And I was just wondering, like, they were talking about their saviors already here.
Yes, he is. He's just sitting there waiting to take the spotlight. And there's not a bit, let me just say this. Of all the people in the world, there's not a better person than him to do it.
Everybody loves him. I mean, if
That's right.
they were to put out a poll today worldwide, and if to say, one person you would want to rule you, and they gave you a list of 3 people, and William was on that list, he'd win by a landslide.
Oh yeah, because he's considered iconic, and that's the one thing that John the Revelator said, that this beast would be iconic, and
Yep.
he is iconic. He is a celebrity of a celebrity. Wherever he goes, whatever he does.
Yep.
And most people think he's the greatest, and they're going to remember his mother and how wonderful she was.
Yep.
It's the perfect play on the minds of people. See, most people think that Satan is going to come looking like a little red dragon with a pitchfork.
He can't. He has to come, and he has to gaslight people, and he has to be this charismatic person, this lovable person, this person that everybody is going to trust and love and accept and follow. For the first 3.5 years, he's going to be the actual epitome of a narcissist by love bombing the world.
That's exactly right. He has the charisma to do it. He has the capability to do it. And then you've got, Charles, no doubt, is the red dragon. He's sitting on the throne. And you've got Peter the Roman as the Pope. The Pope.
Right.
I mean, the Mr. Ecological, whatever, Francis of Assisi. I mean, that is just, what else could you ask for? The 3 most ecologically advanced men on the planet are in positions to rule the world.
Exactly. Well, guys, guess what? Our time is up.
I know, it goes by so fast. Oh my gosh, it goes by so. We've just got so much to talk about, Laura. We really do, because now things are not having to be found. They're coming
They're
so
just
fast
falling
at us.
in our lap. It's like, it's crazy, because it's like you just turn your phone on in the morning and it's like, oh my goodness.
That's right.
I'm going to Wednesday, guys. Wednesday morning, I will definitely make an effort to try to find the congressional hearing so we can actually listen to that while it's live. Joy, again, I'm going to welcome you back next month.
Listen, I look forward to being here. I'm sure, with the disclosures and stuff, we will have even more stuff to discuss.
We will. Final thoughts?
Your soul is your greatest asset. Be smart. Make the right choice. That's where you're going to spend eternity, one place or the other. And you need to protect your greatest asset. That's your soul.
Exactly. And if you're if you're still on the wall, you're still on the fence, just understand Satan owns that fence, guys.
That's right.
Ernie, final thoughts?
Revelation 1 verse 3, blessed is he that readeth and that hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. I believe this verse speaks to itself when we're facing a time where stuff never before witnessed or seen or experienced in our history is starting to come to fruition.
Quick.
Very quickly. And this is the beginning of the second half of 2023, and this is July. July 23rd. What happened in this past 6 months?
Unprecedented.
Unfathomable things that happened. Unprecedented.
Yeah.
And things are going to transpire even further.
Yes.
Man, we got the rumors of World War III at our midst.
Yep.
We got the water temperatures rising to levels never before witnessed in history that can produce monster storms in our Atlantic and our Pacific, causing devastation to our coastlines and inland. We've seen weather phenomena in places where you don't really see that type of weather. We're experiencing drought and famine and pestilences, and I read that Russia, for some reason, lost 2 inmates that was infected with this mysterious type of bacteria.
Yeah, I'm doing some research on that.
Yeah. So we're facing multiple darts from the devil on all fronts, in personal lives and as well as in the world wide scene. And we have to take heed to the prophecies written in Holy Scripture, and we have to keep our relationship with the Most High God at the highest level possible, because we are not going to be able to withstand this on our own, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. You
That's
better
right.
have God on your side, and Jesus is the only one that has the blood that can cover us.
Amen to that.
Amen.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Joy for joining us. As always, she will be back on the panel next month. Stay tuned for that. As soon as we get off here, we'll figure out a date. We also have in the books to come, we have scheduled Gary Wayne. He's going to come up and talk about his new book, Genesis 6, the Genesis 6 part 2 that he has going. That is to be determined. I have it on the books. I know the date, but I'm not going to release that right yet. So yeah. So we'll be back on Wednesday morning. We're going to hopefully play the Senate hearing on these UAPs. And I want to thank everybody in our chat room. I want to thank all of our moderators as always. And until next time, guys, remember, eyes open, no fear.